this has become a common occurrence. Face-offs between Chinese and Philippine vessels over competing claims in the South China Sea.
We shall continue to assert our rights in accordance with the Philippine Constitution and international law. The recent incidents involving no less than our AFP Chief of Staff is worrisome. Yes, but it is a proud demonstration of Filipino courage against coercion and our firm resolve to protect, preserve, and uphold our territorial integrity.
中方将坚决应对任何侵权挑衅，坚定维护自身领土主权和海洋权益。
Rising tensions have spilled into other areas, including politics and economics. The Philippines has cancelled Chinese infrastructure investments under the Belt and Road Initiative. Beijing, meanwhile, accused Manila of violating the One China principle when it officially congratulated the recent election win of Taiwan's incoming President William Lai. It's a sharp contrast from the previous administration, when China and the Philippines enjoyed exceptionally warm relations. Amid promises of Chinese investments in his country, then Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was called Xi Jinping's most respected and important friend. Fast forward to 2023, and the Philippines, under current President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has renewed its close alliance with its traditional partner, the United States. So, why has the Philippines returned to its U.S. alliance?
So it is only natural that for the Philippines to look to its sole treaty partner in the world to strengthen and to redefine the relationship that we have and the roles that we play in the face of those rising tensions that we see now around the South China Sea and Asia-Pacific and Indo-Pacific region.
This is something that is obvious, of course, because the Philippines is a small country and it does need the US to back it up in the event of a hot war with China.
China claims nearly the entire South China Sea, based on its so-called 9-dash line. For its part, Manila claims a large area on its western side, which it calls the West Philippine Sea. The area covers Titu Island and the Second Thomas Shoal, where most of the confrontations have occurred.
Given the Philippines' energy needs to fuel its growing economy, the energy resources in the South China Sea will in the future become increasingly important. So if the Philippines has to reduce its reliance on energy imports, then it is imperative for the Philippines to start developing those untapped oil and gas reserves in the West Philippine Sea.
A 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration threw out major elements of China's claims, but Beijing rejected the ruling and continued building infrastructure in the South China Sea. With help from its longtime ally, the Philippines launched a major program to modernize its army and strengthen its position in the area.
The United States also remains ironclad in our commitment to the defense of the Philippines, including the South China Sea, and we're going to continue to support the Philippines' military modernization goals.
The Philippines' strategic interests in the South China Sea align with those of the U.S., which opposes any potential expansion of China's power in the region.
The United States doesn't take a formal legal position on ownership of the islands, but a cornerstone of U.S. policy is freedom of navigation. And the United States Navy and Air Force will fly, sail anywhere where international law permits. The U.S. position is that China's claims are excessive and have no basis in international law. And indeed, that was the position of the 2016 tribunal, the Permanent Court of Arbitration.
The current Philippine strategy is at odds with that of Marcos's predecessor, who openly courted a key U.S. rival.
I have talked to Xi Jinping. I'm going to China. I will open up all avenues of trade and commerce. They can come in. And kung wala pang panahon, because I could not amend the Constitution right now, then I can give them 60 years plus another 60 years. By that time, you won't need your factory here already.
Duterte vowed to jumpstart infrastructure foreign investment in the country by signing rail and power plant projects under the Belt and Road Initiative. But to secure Chinese funding, the Duterte administration also played down its territorial claims in the South China Sea.
So because of our friendship with China, and because we value your friendship, I will not go there to raise the Philippine flag.
At the same time, Duterte pushed anti-American rhetoric, notably by threatening not to extend a key military treaty with the U.S., the Visiting Forces Agreement.
I want, maybe in the next 2 years, my country freed of the presence of foreign military troops. I want them out. And if I have to revise or abrogate agreements, executive agreements, I will.
Even though past administrations had sought closer ties with Beijing, none had so vehemently rejected Washington's security guarantees. Why?
I mean, there are many reasons, but most of this could be attributed at the personal level. Duterte himself is not part of the political establishment before he became president. He's the first president to come from Mindanao. He won on a moribund party that was not very active prior to the 2016 electoral cycle. And given that he wasn't really deemed as one of the possible contenders in the 2016 elections until of late, that makes him somehow not conform with the typical international view of political elites who tend to become Philippine presidents. As we are seeing right now, Duterte's home province, Davao, might have benefited more than the country itself. So perhaps the main motivation of Duterte was not really that China could help the entire Philippines, but maybe just to help his little fiefdom in Mindanao, in Davao.
And while Duterte remains one of the most popular presidents in Philippine history, his China policy remains controversial.
So, hindi natin dapat payagan ang mga ganitong aksyon o mga mapangahas na hakbang ng China para lamang makuha niya at makontrol yung sambayan ng Pilipino at makuha niya ng buong-buo pati ang ating mga soberanya at kalayaan.
Towards the end of Duterte's tenure, however, geopolitical rivalries began heating up, changing the course of the country's foreign policy. In March 2021, a confrontation between hundreds of Chinese fishing boats, which Manila has said were part of a naval militia, and the Philippine Coast Guard took place at Whitsun Reef.
It was only in the final months of his administration that he started to engage in some sort of a U-turn on China. His officials have made it very clear that it has to do with the South China Sea, because essentially, Whitsun Reef incident back in, I think that is early 2021, was the turning point. And that essentially formed the foundation of the current administration's approach to China.
And despite Duterte's stance, the Philippine military has long pushed back against any kind of military cooperation with China. The Philippine and U.S. armies continued holding their annual Balikatan exercise until Duterte finally agreed to renew the VFA agreement.
And, during that time, as much as Duterte railed against the United States and threatened to leave the alliance, the actual number of military exercises and engagements went up. So both the Philippine military and the United States military really were working behind the scenes to keep the alliance going, even when the president was so vociferously against it.
When President Marcos Jr. was elected, Observers in China assumed Duterte's successor would continue his policy, even heralding the dawn of a golden age in bilateral relations. But in the end, the historical U.S. alliance prevailed.
So I think in this sense, that cannot just be undermined by a pro-Beijing, a pro-China president who served for 6 years, because the inextricable links between the societies of the United States and the Philippines go way back.
The U.S. started to colonize the islands in 1898 and modeled the country's political institutions around its own. The countries maintained close ties even after the Philippines regained independence in 1946, signing a military alliance in 1951. The late Philippine dictator Ferdinand Marcos, and father to the current president, was a key player in the U.S.'s anti-communist containment policy in Southeast Asia. Even after the fall of Marcos Sr., the Philippines remained an important American partner. Economically, the U.S. is one of the Philippines' main trading partners, only surpassed by China and going toe-to-toe with Japan. And the U.S. remains by far the most trusted country among Filipinos, scoring 89% in a public opinion survey conducted in 2022. More than 3 million Filipinos or Americans with Filipino ancestry live in the U.S., forming the largest Filipino diaspora, while many of the Philippine elites are educated in the U.S.
Closer relations with the United States is almost a given throughout Philippine history. It was only during the past administration of Rodrigo Duterte that there was a deliberate attempt to instigate certain wide distance from this very old security alliance.
It's an old security alliance that continues to be revitalized. In April 2023, Marcos Jr. announced an expansion of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, a treaty allowing U.S. forces to be stationed in 5 Philippine military bases to include 4 new bases.
There are a lot of people who are very concerned that the alliance with the United States and the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement could pull the Philippines into a conflict between the United States and China. We forget just how close the northern island of Luzon is to Taiwan. The Philippines is in a very hard spot because they are a treaty ally, and they are bound to come to America's defense in some way if we are attacked. And I think there are also a lot of Filipinos that think that if the Americans are pre-positioning supplies or fuel or ammunition in the Philippines for any Taiwan contingency, that makes the country a fair target for the Chinese.
The 2023 edition of the Balikatan drills was the largest ever conducted, involving over 17,000 troops. And much to Beijing's displeasure, Manila has started to forge ties with other key American partners in the region, namely Australia and Japan. But with the coming 2024 U.S. elections, the future of the relationship may very well depend on the next leader in the White House.
Should Trump get reelected, the reality is he is sowed seeds of doubt about the U.S. willingness to uphold its treaty commitments. And that would be devastating, not just for the Philippines, but for Japan, for South Korea, and that really could unwind all regional security. Should Biden get reelected, then I think you will see the cautious and gradual improvement in relations